Hi, I'm Karlin Borisenko. In early 2020, I was the knitting Democrat who accidentally went viral on the internet for going to a Trump rally and then left the party. I became the conservative darling, was on all the shows, traveled around the country, and then realized that conservatives were no better than Democrats. If there's one thing that I've learned, it's that both political tribes are two sides of the same coin. But it wasn't all bad. On my journey, I became obsessed with understanding the woke ideology and the culture war. I broke the story of the city of Seattle doing segregated training with its employees.
How bad has this stuff become? The city of Seattle has now put out, I'm not kidding you, this is according to Dr. Karlin Borisenko, who's an organizational psychologist. The city of Seattle asked its white employees to voluntarily spend a day off in a training about their internalized racial superiority.
I broke the story that led to the first ever federal lawsuit against critical race theory in the schools. I broke the Coke Be Less White story, one of the biggest anti-woke stories of all time. It got over 30 million views. Coca-Cola's corporate headquarters even had to change their outgoing voicemail.
Throughout the past few days, you may have seen inaccurate reporting on the content of our recently launched diversity, equity, and inclusion training program.
I exposed the schools in Burlington, Vermont for grooming middle school children live on the internet. They called me an unwoke cult leader for that. And the Vermont Human Rights Commission slandered me publicly as being a hate channel. I even got called a hero in Breitbart for exposing that the Washington Post was writing a hit piece on Christopher Rufo. I have broken story after story after story about what's going on in the public schools, from Cambridge, Massachusetts, to autistic sex education, to the Department of Education in Michigan, literally training teachers all over the state how to groom children. I wrote a book called Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. I host a podcast all about fighting back, and I'm downloading all of my knowledge to you on my Substack, karlin.substack.com. The world is a crazy place. We are literally surrounded by cults on all sides. On this show, we're going to do a deep dive into all aspects of the culture war, and I will show you the dark, dystopian underbellies on both sides. Here are the commitments I'll make to you. I will always tell you the truth. I will always bring you receipts. And if you stick with me, I promise you will see the world differently. Welcome to the cult. Please mount that like button for me and subscribe if you feel so inclined. Well, hello, a little bit early today, everyone. Breaking news. Project Veritas is suing James O'Keefe. And to be honest, I wanted to read the lawsuit, and I thought, why would I just sit here at my desk and read the lawsuit by myself when I can read the lawsuit with friends on the internet? And so that's what we're going to be doing on this early stream today, guys. I just found out about this. I actually haven't even really looked that closely at the lawsuit yet. And I just thought that we would work our way through the lawsuit and actually read the documents and read what's going on. And this is not the 5 p.m. stream. This is a breaking news, I want to read the lawsuit stream. And so that's what we're going to be doing today, guys. I'm not going to do outrage about this. I'm not going to say Project Veritas is awful and should be thrown into the burning sea of fire or any bullshit like that. I want to read the lawsuit. I want to know what the lawsuit says. It is 70 pages long. I'm not saying I'm going to read the whole lawsuit myself because I don't know that my voice would be able to do that because that would suck. But we're going to work our way through it. We're going to do the best we can. And, in this, it says it's only 37 pages long. So I don't know why this is saying it's 70 pages long, but I suppose we'll figure that out. So it might be a little bit more of a boring stream, wonky stream, but if you really want to know what's going on in Project Veritas without having to rely on someone else to tell you, I will pop the lawsuit in the chat and you can follow along for yourself. This is the PDF. As you guys know, we always go to primary source documentation. Don't listen to any of the commentators. Don't listen to any of the influencers. They're all biased. They're all being paid off by someone. And I want to see for myself what it actually says. And so that's what we're going to do on this here breaking news stream. Now, as Bot just said, this is not to be confused with my 5 p.m. stream because I definitely hope I get this wrapped up by 5 p.m. because I will be going live at 5 p.m. whether I get this lawsuit completely read by then or not. And we will be doing something else. We will be doing what I had originally planned, which is at 5 p.m. today at the normal time that we stream. We are going to be listening to this stream, this Twitter Spaces from last week, and basically what's going on is the Trump and DeSantis influencers are already fighting. They're already at each other's throats. We have like another full effing year of this, guys. A full year before we even get to the RNC. And then after that, people have to like make nice and whatever. But we have another full year of Trump and DeSantis influencers fighting, and of course, Chris Christie just announced today that he's going to be running for president. I mean, have you ever heard of a bigger waste of money in your life than Chris Christie running for president? Oh, wait, I know. Mike Pence is going to be announcing he's running for president. What another waste of perfectly good money. And so the Republican clown show is building up already. And so there's been this dissension brewing between all of the paid influencers on both sides. And apparently they all got together in a Twitter Spaces last week. And Mike Cernovich tweeted out the recording, and he says, "I can never say shit to anyone who watches a Real Housewives show ever again as I'm listening to this." And so we will be listening to that Twitter Space at 5 p.m. today for the normal stream, because again, when I have homework to do, I like to do it on the internet with friends. And so that's what's coming up a little bit later on today. But for right now, let's just dig into this lawsuit with Project Veritas suing James O'Keefe. I don't know how big I can make this on my screen where you guys can still kind of see it. I guess that's a little bit better. Can I shut that off? No, I can't shut that off. I don't want this. Okay, whatever. We'll leave it like that. All right. So in general, here's what I think of this situation. I think that James O'Keefe is a genius. I also think that James O'Keefe is an asshole. Now, sometimes you need to be the asshole. Sometimes the asshole is the only one that can do the things that need to get done. And do I believe that James O'Keefe was exactly the type of asshole that Project Veritas needed to get built? Yes, I do. Is there no doubt in my mind that James O'Keefe was a massive pain in the ass to work for? No doubt in my mind at all. You could not pay me enough money to work for James O'Keefe. I could see collaborating with James O'Keefe on like small projects where there are mutual interests, but I would never work for James O'Keefe. Never. And again, I think that he is probably a really difficult person to work for. That's not to say that there aren't reasons that he's difficult to work for. That's not to say that he doesn't have cause to be difficult to work for. And that's not to say that being an asshole wasn't necessary to build what he built. But I also I'm inclined on this one. I don't know. We're going to have to read the lawsuit, but like my inclination is honestly to side with Project Veritas on this one a little bit, because James O'Keefe wasn't fired. They didn't fire him. They suspended him, and they did stop paying him, which is a bone in James O'Keefe's bowl, I suppose. But like James O'Keefe kind of fucked over Project Veritas really, really badly. And here's the thing, but I also don't think Project Veritas is innocent in this either, because like I think that more people doing undercover journalism is better. So if James O'Keefe wants to run off and do his own little undercover journalism, I don't think Project Veritas should be getting in the way of that. And so I don't know. I'm kind of two minds about this. I absolutely believe that James O'Keefe is the asshole that Project Veritas says he is. I also believe that more independent journalism is better than less independent journalism. It drives me absolutely insane, the competition that exists in this space because it's like there are so few people that exist in this space as it is. There's more than enough for everyone to do. There's more than enough things for everyone to investigate. There's more than enough breaking news. We already don't have enough people covering the things that need to be covered. And it's like, you're going to destroy people even more. That just doesn't make sense to me at all. So I don't know. I could go either way on this one. I tend to be more inclined to be on Project Veritas's side than I am on James O'Keefe's side because he is a little bit belligerent-y for me. And I know that's ironic that I'm the one saying that because I've been known to be a little bit belligerent here and there. But we'll see. Let's dig in and let's read this here lawsuit. And again, let me pop the link. I should probably pin the link to the top of the chat on YouTube. Hang on. Here is the lawsuit. We'll pin that to the top of the chat. And guys, if you want to support the work I'm doing while we are reading this here lawsuit, please make sure you head over to Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. Sign up for $5 a month, $50 a year. I wrote something that pissed off conservatives yesterday. So of course I was awake. I woke up this morning to find the usual conservative in my inbox say, Carlyn, I can't believe that you would write something bad about conservatives. I can't believe that you never do anything but shit on conservatives, Carlyn. That's all you ever do. I am leaving. I'm canceling my subscription because I wrote one article about how they all attacked Ted Cruz because Ted Cruz was like, gay people shouldn't have to go to prison for the rest of their lives. And then Ted Cruz's Twitter feed was filled with, I mean, some of the most horrible, vile shit that you've ever seen in your life, mostly coming from conservatives because a lot of them don't like the gays. And so I wrote about that on my Substack as an example of woke on the right, because I always hear, Carlyn, you talk about woke on the right all the time, and then you never give us any examples. Well, I gave you an example, and then you whined and cried and stomped your feet, just as I knew you would. So if you do want to make up for the fact that whiny conservatives gonna whiny, go ahead and get signed up on the Substack, and that will really help me out. All right, guys, let's without further ado, let's dig into this here lawsuit, and I'm just gonna read, and we're just gonna see what we find. Being known as the founder of an organization does not entitle that person to run amok and put his own interests ahead of the organization. Defendant James O'Keefe failed in his duties to plaintiff Project Veritas, causing it serious and significant damage. O'Keefe must be held accountable, as must the organization O'Keefe created, the O'Keefe Media Group, for suborning his violations. Summarily, two individuals formerly associated with the plaintiffs, defendants R.C. Maxwell and Anthony, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce Anthony's last name. Anthony is going to be what we call him. Breached their contracts with the plaintiffs for the benefits of OMG. OMG, you know what? This is the bone I'm going to throw to James O'Keefe. OMG was a brilliant name. I mean, you got to give the guy credit for branding, if nothing else. Plaintiffs Project Veritas and Project Veritas Action Fund by their attorneys and parties allege. Plaintiff Project Veritas is a non-stock corporation organized under the laws of Virginia. Blah, blah, blah. Boring, 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 boring. Jurisdiction, boring, boring, boring. I don't care about this. I don't care about this. The employment agreement. Okay. On June 22nd, 2010, O'Keefe entered into an employment agreement with plaintiffs, with the operative version being the employment agreement as amended September 2022, with O'Keefe and Project Veritas signed on September 30th, 2022. As part of the employment agreement, O'Keefe agreed to certain terms and conditions both during and after the term of his employment. The employment agreement says that he shall devote employees' full working time and attention and best efforts to the performance of employees' job, okay? In paragraph 10A, O'Keefe agreed, Project Veritas shall be the sole owner of any and all rights in and to results and proceeds of employee services to Project Veritas, and it shall have the sole right to use, exploit, advertise, and exhibit the foregoing in all media, whether known now known or hereafter devised throughout all the world in all languages as Project Veritas in its sole and unfettered discretion shall determine. Employee agrees that everything created by the employee in connection with the services employee provides to Project Veritas shall belong exclusively to Project Veritas, not the employee, including like everything ever that the employee ever does. In the employment agreement, O'Keefe acknowledged that certain information is confidential. O'Keefe agreed to keep all confidential information in the highest confidence and not to disclose confidential information. O'Keefe's obligation to maintain plaintiff's confidential information in the highest confidence continues beyond his employment. The employment agreement also contains a non-disparagement clause. Never sign anything with a non-disparagement clause. Would be my general rule of thumb. I won't do it. I stopped doing it many years. I refuse to do it when an organization bribed me thousands of dollars because they really, really, really wanted me to sign something with a non-disparagement clause, and I said, "Go F yourself." No. And I later used that to my advantage. The employment agreement contains a liquidated damages provision in which O'Keefe acknowledged that if he breached his non-disclosure and or non-disparagement obligations, Project Veritas could recover liquidated damages of $100,000 or actual damages, whichever is greater. The employment agreement also prohibits O'Keefe from engaging in outside activities that would interfere or hinder his work with Project Veritas. Specifically, O'Keefe agreed he would not engage in any activity, whether as an employee, contractor, volunteer in any capacity, or for any person or entity other than Project Veritas that will or likely hinder, interfere, or prevent employee from devoting employees' full time and attention and best efforts to employees' work with Project Veritas. This is not good for James O'Keefe, guys, just so you know. Like, James O'Keefe, like, is kind of effed. And you might personally prefer James O'Keefe. And that's not what this is about, though. James O'Keefe was not fired by Project Veritas. He was not fired. He was put on suspension without pay. And then James O'Keefe, while still not being fired by Project Veritas, after he signed this employee agreement, and Tom J says it's a shitty contract. Well, that might be, but James O'Keefe signed it. He was not fired by Project Veritas. He then went and started his own outlet that is directly competitive with Project Veritas and dragged Project Veritas through the mud in order to get fundraising for his new outlet. And whether or not you agree with James O'Keefe or Project Veritas, like, that doesn't actually matter when it comes to James O'Keefe signing an employment agreement, not being fired, being suspended without pay, and then creating a competing media outlet. Do you guys see what the problem is here? The employment agreement also prohibits O'Keefe from soliciting two categories of people, donors and employees. Oh, he broke that too. James is going to lose this. He is. He is going to lose. First, O'Keefe agreed that during and for 1 year after his employment, he will not directly or indirectly, individually, or in any capacity solicit, offer employment, employ, or interfere in any of Project Veritas employees or contractors or other persons or entities that was a Project Veritas employee or contractor within 12 months immediately prior to termination. No, it's not. No, it's not. It is not weasel words. It is not. Because, Alan, they were still adjudicating the suspension. You can be suspended and then reinstated once it's adjudicated. James O'Keefe did not allow for the process to play out. And instead of resigning, because remember, James O'Keefe could have resigned. He would still be bound by this employee agreement, but he could have resigned. James O'Keefe didn't do that. The employee agreement also prohibits O'Keefe during and after his employment from contacting, soliciting, and otherwise communicating with any person or entity that is a donor or prospective donor to Project Veritas whom employee learns of or with whom employee otherwise comes into contact with as a result of employee's work, blah, blah, blah. The employment agreement also requires that upon separation of employment, he shall return any or all Project Veritas property, including everything he got from Project Veritas. The agreement incorporates by reference Project Veritas's employee handbook. B. Plaintiffs suspend O'Keefe pending the completion of investigations into his alleged misconduct. To the best of my understanding, James O'Keefe, and the lawsuit may say something different, but to the best of my understanding, James O'Keefe was not fired by Project Veritas. He was suspended pending the completion of the investigation, and he did not formally resign. During O'Keefe's employment, the board became aware of serious allegations by Project Veritas employees about incredibly troubling workplace and financial misconduct by O'Keefe. Now, I question, and I did previous streams on this, I personally question how serious those infractions actually were. But that's not the point. For instance, Project Veritas's board of directors heard allegations that O'Keefe routinely behaved unprofessionally during team meetings, including by screaming at coworkers and belittling them and their contributions to Project Veritas. If I were to guess if James O'Keefe is a narcissist, I would say yeah, to be really honest with you. So none of this is actually surprising to me. Like I said, I've never disputed whether or not James O'Keefe is an asshole. I always thought he was. O'Keefe was alleged to have particularly targeted female employees with mean-spirited comments about their lack of contributions to the company and or inappropriate comments about personal situations like pregnancies. Employees allege that O'Keefe had strained relationships with several donors because he was routinely late for meetings and rude at VIP events designed to give donors extra access to O'Keefe. O'Keefe was also routinely late for work meetings or canceled them at the last minute. According to the allegations, O'Keefe exhibited a general lack of respect for employees and his team. Other employees alleged that they personally had observed obscene messages between O'Keefe and various women on social media applications when accessing O'Keefe's phone for work-related matters. I want to see the messages. I want to see the receipts on that, Project Veritas. The board also learned of O'Keefe's alleged financial misconduct. Multiple employees allege that O'Keefe used Project Veritas employees to run personal errands for him. These errands included picking up O'Keefe's laundry, cleaning his boat, repairing his boat, and doing other similar errands for O'Keefe. I mean, if this is all true, this is absolutely like narcissist behavior. And it wouldn't surprise me if it was true. At all. O'Keefe allegedly used his Project Veritas excuse me. O'Keefe allegedly used his Project Veritas credit card for some personal expenses and directed Project Veritas funds to be used for lavish expenses and in some instances for his personal benefit. Examples of these allegations include directing the organization to pay more than $10,000 for a helicopter flight from New York to Maine without a clear benefit to Project Veritas. Directing the organization to pay for first-class air travel for O'Keefe even where the flight did not satisfy the organization's policy for approving first-class flights. Using his Project Veritas credit card for expensive hotel room suites at luxury hotels without clear business purpose when other employees on the same trip were required to stay in budget accommodations. Directing the organization to pay for expenses associated with large organizational awareness events like the Project Veritas experience without engaging in any analysis to help the organization understand the potential return on investments or capitalize on the connections made through those events. causing the organization to pay for his regular use of private car services, black cars, even to go relatively short distances in and around Manhattan, and then wait outside of restaurants for hours at a total expense of more than $150,000 over the past 18 months. O'Keefe took it upon himself without authority on February 2nd, 2023, to terminate the employment of Project Veritas's chief financial officer, and O'Keefe admitted it was he who did the terminating. The board took immediate action in response to these troubling allegations. The board created a special audit committee to investigate the allegations and retained outside counsel to help conduct the investigation. On February 6, 2023, by majority vote, the board placed O'Keefe on paid leave, suspending his authority to hire and fire staff for 180 days, requiring him to surrender his company credit card, and restricting his access to proprietary information, including donor lists, but explicitly indicated that he remained as CEO and member of the board. So this is important, guys. Project Veritas did not fire James O'Keefe. They did not. They explicitly said that he remained the CEO of the company and a member of the board. After authorization to use the card was revoked on February 6, 2023, O'Keefe continued to use the Project Veritas credit card for personal expenses in the amount of $19,000. O'Keefe participated in the February 6, 2023 meeting where employee testimony was heard. O'Keefe refused to participate in a February 10th meeting at which financial findings were presented to the board, and O'Keefe was suspended as CEO and from the board, but was not removed as a member indefinitely, pending the resolution of the board's investigation into the allegations of O'Keefe's misconduct. Well, and see, this black car stuff, I am less worried about the black car stuff than, listen, like I've said this like repeatedly. I think that some of, though not all, some of the allegations that Project Veritas has made against James O'Keefe are nonsense. And I think this black car one is one of the pieces of nonsense. Like, it doesn't surprise me at all that James O'Keefe would want to use a black car service. Okay, fine. But even if every allegation that Project Veritas has made against James O'Keefe is nonsense, that does not mean that it is acceptable for James O'Keefe to break the employment agreement that he has with Project Veritas while he is still employed by Project Veritas to go and start his own company and start poaching employees. Like, one does not negate the other. Well, in this case, JH, James O'Keefe is the narcissist. James O'Keefe is the narcissist. James O'Keefe was the one running the smear campaign. Project Veritas wasn't running the smear campaign. It was James O'Keefe. On February 15th, the Project Veritas executive director and board put out a statement explicitly stating James O'Keefe has not been removed from Project Veritas. The board noted that the board members all love James O'Keefe. They're all volunteers handpicked by James O'Keefe. And in that statement, it was explicitly denied that the actions regarding O'Keefe related to Pfizer, stating we are still in no way and never will be brought to you by Pfizer. James sent an email on February 16th outlining the terms for his return, including the resignations of all of the board and most of the Project Veritas officers, vesting him with unilateral control over the plaintiffs. James O'Keefe is absolutely a narcissist. I am convinced of it. Otherwise, he would not return to the employment of the plaintiffs. So essentially, James O'Keefe wanted everyone fired. that had anything to do with preventing James O'Keefe from doing exactly and explicitly what James O'Keefe wanted to do, which is dumb. You can't run an organization like that, guys. You just can't. The board did not terminate O'Keefe's employment, but rather intended to reinstate him with appropriate safeguards. O'Keefe was not formally removed from the board until April 24th, 2023. O'Keefe was not formally terminated from his employment until May 15th. Okay, so James O'Keefe was formally fired from Project Veritas on May 15th, like 2 weeks ago. James O'Keefe breached his employment agreement. In response to his suspension, and I want to say this, JH saying, we need evidence of this. No, you don't. Do you know why? Because if every single allegation that Project Veritas made against James O'Keefe is false, that still does not mean that he did not breach his employment agreement. The only thing that matters in this lawsuit is, did James O'Keefe breach his employment agreement that he signed voluntarily? That is the only question that matters. Nothing else matters. Was James O'Keefe shitty to the employees at Project Veritas? Probably. Did James O'Keefe steal money from Project Veritas? Maybe. Was James O'Keefe putting on events under Project Veritas's dime to promote himself and his brand and being James O'Keefe, the best person in the history of people? I mean, maybe, but literally none of those things matter. Whether or not he did do those things or didn't do those things, the only thing that matters is, did he breach his employment agreement? And on this, on the face of it, we know that James O'Keefe breached his employment agreement. How do we know? Because we know what the employment agreement was, and we know that James O'Keefe was not formally terminated by Project Veritas until May 15th. James O'Keefe broke his employment agreement several times over. And we have all the proof we need by looking at what James O'Keefe has put out in public. So that's what we're dealing with. Doesn't James O'Keefe setting up the board and the company in this structure in the first place take away the control the narcissist needs? Well, he did that to get money. So it was a means to an end. When James O'Keefe set it up, it was a means to an end because he needed to do it that way to get money to run the organization. But that doesn't mean he can't control the situation in other ways. He obviously thought he was controlling the situation. So James O'Keefe breached his employment agreement, which is what this lawsuit is about. In response to his suspension, O'Keefe immediately began breaching his obligations under and the restrictive covenants of the employment agreement. Remember, James O'Keefe was not formally terminated from Project Veritas until May 15th. On February 17th, James formed OMG. OMG notes on its website that it's located in New York, where James O'Keefe lives and where Project Veritas is headquartered. According to its website, OMG is a media organization managed by O'Keefe with substantially the same mission and structure as Project Veritas. OMG is a company whose website describes itself as having an army of journalists and is building an army of investigators and exposers alongside the most elite journalists in the world. All right. I want to tell you about the interaction that I had with James O'Keefe after he left Project Veritas, because I was just kind of curious about what would happen. And I contacted James O'Keefe. I contacted him via Twitter and I contacted him via email. And I said, James, I don't know what you're doing now, but I have a metric ton of information about what is going on inside different school districts around the country, and I can't keep up with all of it. And I can point you to exactly what needs to be exposed and where it needs to be exposed. And I would like to find a way to collaborate and see if there's something that we can do that will be mutually beneficial for both of us. That made sense to me. A million people have said, Carlin, go to James O'Keefe. Joe, go to James O'Keefe. When I infiltrated the socialist conference, Carlin, go to James O'Keefe. Go to James O'Keefe. Well, do you want to know why I will never, ever, ever work with James O'Keefe? Because James O'Keefe's response to me was, give me all your information. And I said, well, I've worked really hard to develop this information and attain this information and have built out the systems to get this information. And I want to work with you on this. I want to be collaborative on this. And James said, I don't care. No, I don't. No, he said, he didn't say, I don't care. He said, I don't understand. Why are you reaching out to me if you don't just want to give me everything you have? And I said, well, I'm willing to work with you on this, but I am uncomfortable in handing over 2 years of research to you guys to let you go and do whatever you want with it. Like, and basically James O'Keefe wanted me to give him everything I have and just walk away and let him take it from there. And that to me was like, no, you're not going to do that. And so that's the interaction that I've had with him, is that he wanted every piece of research that I had, and he wanted me to just give it to him with asking no questions. And so I'm just putting that in context out there, in the context of us reading about the media organization that James O'Keefe is forming, okay? And also because I don't want to answer the question later because I know I'm going to have to. The OMG website even references never being shut down again because O'Keefe owns it. Forming and operating OMG was in violation of the employment agreement prohibited outside activities provision. O'Keefe made multiple media appearances in which he falsely stated that he was terminated from Project Veritas, including but not limited to the programs set forth below. On March 15th, he appeared on Charlie Kirk and falsely implied his separation from the plaintiffs was part of an aftermath of a Pfizer story and falsely stated he was being thrown out of Project Veritas. The appearance on the foregoing program was by O'Keefe for the benefit of OMG and as an agent thereof. On March 15th, O'Keefe appeared on Steve Bannon's War Room and falsely stated he had been removed from Project Veritas. The appearance on the foregoing program was by O'Keefe for the benefit of OMG and as an agent thereof. On March 15th, O'Keefe appeared on Under the Skin with Russell Brand, where he falsely stated he had been thrown out of Project Veritas. On March 15th, O'Keefe appeared on The Mark Levin Show, where he falsely stated he was ousted from Project Veritas. On March 19th, O'Keefe appeared on Human Events and The Ben Shapiro Show, where he falsely stated that Project Veritas had been stolen from him and that he had been thrown out. And by the way, guys, I'm going to say this too. Every single one of these media outlets failed to do their due diligence on this, because I correctly reported that James O'Keefe wasn't fired by Project Veritas on a live stream. So none of them have any excuse about this. None of them pushed James O'Keefe at all on this. They all reported fake news out to their audiences. On May 3rd, O'Keefe appeared on the Megyn Kelly Show and falsely stated that he was terminated from his employment with Project Veritas, and again falsely implied the separation was related to the Pfizer story. These statements, which Mr. O'Keefe knows to be false, are disparaging of the plaintiffs, were intended to discredit Project Veritas's board of directors, and are all breaches of the employment agreement. O'Keefe also disparaged the board by falsely insinuating that the pharmaceutical company Pfizer orchestrated O'Keefe's suspension and that it was somehow done to mollify Pfizer, a company about which a video had been released regarding potentially disturbing actions taken by Pfizer via the coronavirus. Such statements were made by O'Keefe for the benefit of OMG. O'Keefe misappropriated Project Veritas confidential information by taking donor lists and contact information, equipment, as well as unreleased investigation publications by Project Veritas and rebranded them as OMG. Holy shit. So James O'Keefe stole unreleased investigations from Project Veritas and then released them under the banner of his new media group. That's shady. After his suspension, O'Keefe engaged in a campaign to disparage Project Veritas to its donors and solicit them to donate to OMG. Such campaign was by O'Keefe for the benefit of OMG and as an agent thereof. Summarily, O'Keefe solicited numerous Project Veritas employees and contractors to attempt to poach them to come work for him at OMG. Such solicitation by O'Keefe was for the benefit of OMG and as an agent thereof. On February 20th, 2023, O'Keefe reported and published a video on the Vimeo platform, which has since been removed, announcing he was packing up all his personal belongings and he was intending to start anew without resigning from his employment or board membership. So that's really important. And generally soliciting current employees of the plaintiff to work with him, stating, "So our mission continues. I'm not done. The mission will perhaps take on a new name. It may no longer be called Veritas, Project Veritas. I will need a bunch of people around me, and I'll make sure you know how to find me." So do you feel safe we're now working with Project Veritas now that James is gone, since he was the one who you said was so odd about? I feel 100% safe working with Project Veritas. The people running Project Veritas, and I've known some of these people for a while, they're good people. They really are. Now, I may not agree with every decision that's been made. I don't agree with every decision that's been made. But I will tell you that I have never had a personally bad interaction with any current employee at Project Veritas. I have had extremely concerning interactions with James O'Keefe. I have never had something I would consider like a deal breaker. I have never had any of those interactions with Project Veritas employees, and that includes like the senior leadership of Project Veritas. Such publications were for the benefit of OMG. O'Keefe has and continues to solicit Project Veritas donors and employees and contractors in direct violation of his employment agreement on behalf of OMG. This FBI thing is a little bit concerning, Paul. As an example of donor solicitation in violation of his employment agreement on or about May 25th, so May 25th is going to be after he was fired from Project Veritas. But remember, the Project Veritas employment agreement was still valid for a year after the termination of the employment relationship. So on or about May 25th, O'Keefe, from his OMG email address, sent a form solicitation email to at least 2 Project Veritas donors who were not OMG donors, stating, "Hey there, I know you've been a supporter of my work in the last year," and linking to the OMG webpage that solicits monetary subscriptions. The only way O'Keefe and OMG had those donors' contact information was because it was part of a confidential list kept by Project Veritas. O'Keefe also misappropriated Project Veritas property by taking Project Veritas equipment, donor lists, intellectual property for his own use with OMG. Indeed, several Project Veritas staff have already joined OMG, including R.C. Maxwell and Anthony, who appear to be using Project Veritas property in the course of their employment with OMG. That is a big no-no, guys. You can't do that. Anthony's employment agreement comes with the same terms as O'Keefe. Maxwell's employment agreement comes with the same terms as O'Keefe. The employment agreement states that if O'Keefe breaches or threatens to breach the employment agreement, Project Veritas can seek preliminary and permanent injunctive relief in court. O'Keefe acknowledged that such a breach or threatened breach will result in irreparable harm to Project Veritas. Plaintiffs will continue to be irreparably harmed unless the court orders James O'Keefe to comply with the terms of his employment agreement. So that's what they're seeking. They want the court to say, James, cut the shit and comply with the terms of your employment agreement. So effectively, and again, I'm not sure how I feel about this exactly. Effectively, Project Veritas is trying to shut James O'Keefe up and prevent him from doing journalism. But, which I don't like that. I don't think that's good. But I also understand why they're doing it, because James O'Keefe is in egregious breach of his employment agreement. And that's not cool. We're literally reading the lawsuit. This is what the lawsuit says. The employment agreement also provides that if Project Veritas obtains an injunction, O'Keefe shall immediately become liable to pay the attorney's fees and costs incurred by Project Veritas to obtain the injunction, so they want him to pay legal fees. If this court does not preliminarily enjoin O'Keefe and OMG from soliciting Project Veritas's donors and employees, they may have all been solicited by the time Project Veritas wins a judgment prohibiting them from such solicitation. Causes of action. Okay, this is all legal gobbledygook. He used the donor list, he used the donor list, he used the donor lists. He solicited Project Veritas donors. This is kind of basically already restating some of the stuff that we've held. As a direct and proximate result of O'Keefe's breaches of the employment agreement, plaintiffs are entitled to $100,000 in liquidated damage per breach, which they are entitled to recover from O'Keefe. Okay. So they want $100,000 from him per breach. As a direct and proximate result of O'Keefe's foregoing breaches of contract, plaintiffs have been irreparably harmed, and they are entitled to a preliminary and permanent injunctive relief enjoining Keefe from disparaging plaintiffs in violation of the non-disparagement provisions of the employment agreement, contacting and soliciting plaintiff donors in violation of the agreement, contacting and soliciting plaintiff's employees in violation of the agreement, obtaining or using any of the plaintiff's confidential information, keeping and failing to return property. Plaintiffs have suffered and will continue to suffer irreparable harm unless the court enjoins O'Keefe's misconduct. Let's see, this is all stuff we've already read before. The balance of equities falls entirely in favor of the plaintiffs. Plaintiffs' allegations set forth the various injuries that they would suffer if O'Keefe is not enjoined. On the other hand, O'Keefe would suffer no prejudice under the imposed injunction. So essentially, this lawsuit is saying that they want the court to demand, like immediately, that James O'Keefe cut the shit and start abiding by his employment agreement. Finally, an immediate injunction is necessary because without it, any formal injunction plaintiffs win in the future will be rendered ineffectual and meaningless. If O'Keefe is not enjoined from soliciting plaintiffs, donors, and employees and misappropriating the confidential information, he will have solicited all or enough donors and employees and misappropriated enough confidential information that such a final award adjoining him from continuing that conduct will be meaningless. Let's see. This is basically restating the same stuff. Breach of fiduciary responsibility. Plaintiffs repeat and allege paragraphs 1 through 88 hereof as if fully herein, blah, blah, blah. Under New York law, a fiduciary responsibility or a fiduciary relationship arises when one has reposed trust and confidence in the integrity and fidelity of another, who thereby gains a resulting superiority of influence over the first when one assumes control or responsibility. As a director of plaintiffs, O'Keefe has a duty to serve plaintiffs good faith and with a degree of care which an ordinary prudent person in a like position would use under similar circumstances. Let's see. O'Keefe breached his fiduciary responsibility to the plaintiffs by forming OMG while still a member of the board of directors, soliciting employees. Again, guys, like I really want to make sure people understand. None of what they're saying is actually in dispute. James O'Keefe did all of this in public for all of us to watch. Breach of duty of loyalty. It's kind of saying the same thing. James O'Keefe, fucked us over essentially. Let's see. Saying the same stuff. They're basically saying, here are all the ways in which James O'Keefe broke his employment agreement. And then they're repeating the same stuff we already read. Let's read this section, though. Okay. This is about tortious interference. Tortious interference, as I understand it, and I'm not a lawyer, but I've learned enough about this particular concept to know it's like interfering with a business relationship. If you interfere with a business relationship that someone has with someone else, and that interference causes that person to suffer damages, you can sue them for tortious interference for the amount that you lost as a direct result of their interference. Under New York law, to recover damages for tortious interference with contract, the plaintiffs must prove the existence of a valid contract with a third party, the defendant's knowledge of that contract, the defendant's intentional improper procurement of a breach of that contract, and damages. Oh, he's going to lose this time, Beth. He's going to lose big time on this. He's going to lose. This is narcissism right here. This is what happens when your narcissism pushes you to go to just not even. James didn't even cross the line. James leaped over the line and kept fucking running until he hit the next line. This is really bad for him. At all times herein, OMG had knowledge of the employment agreement as its managing member and primary officer and agent was O'Keefe a party to the contract. O'Keefe was required under the employment agreement to devote his full working time and attention to the best performances of it. Yeah, he spit on the line. He pissed on the line. He did everything he could to that line to destroy the effing line. He ran over the line with a tiger. Thank you, King Peter, for the chat. Remember, this is written Peter, this doesn't matter, and I'm going to explain why. Remember, this is written from entirely Project Veritas's perspective. It will obviously look bad for James. It is written entirely one-sided. Wait for the response. Peter, we all saw this happen. We all saw this happen. Everything that Project Veritas is saying is provably true based on public information. You cannot fudge dates on a calendar. This isn't everything they're saying is true. James had this. Here's what matters in the course of this conversation. James O'Keefe signed an employment agreement with Project Veritas. James O'Keefe was then put under suspension without pay by Project Veritas, but he was not fired. So therefore, the employment agreement still applied. James O'Keefe never resigned from Project Veritas. He never resigned. They suspended him pending the results of the investigation, but he never resigned. His employment was not terminated with Project Veritas until 2 weeks ago, May 15th. None of these things are in dispute at all. He signed the employment agreement. He was still an employee up until May 15th. Between the time that James O'Keefe left Project Veritas in dramatic fashion, went all over the media disparaging Project Veritas, set up his own media group specifically to compete with Project Veritas. None of this is in dispute. Recruited employees from Project Veritas. None of this is in dispute. He did all of this while he was still employed by Project Veritas. And therefore, took donor lists from Project Veritas, solicited people who were funding Project Veritas to come and work with him. None of this is in dispute at all. We all saw it happen. Every single thing that James O'Keefe did between leaving Project Veritas in dramatic fashion and when his employment was officially terminated by Project Veritas on May 15th, all of that was in breach of his employment contract that he signed. None of this is in dispute. We all saw it happen on the internet. And guys, this is true regardless of whether or not you like James O'Keefe or not. Literally none of what I have just said is in dispute. None of it. I covered all of it at the time. None of these dates are in dispute. The employment agreement is not in dispute. That is all that matters here. James signed the employment agreement. James was never fired by Project Veritas. James never quit his job with Project Veritas. The employment contract ended 2 weeks ago. And prior to that happening, James O'Keefe set up a competing group, recruited Project Veritas employees, solicited Project Veritas donors, and all that is enough. All that is enough. And it all disparaged Project Veritas all over conservative media. All of that is enough. He's going to lose, and he's going to lose badly. Although O'Keefe was on paid time off, the formation of OMG to compete with Project Veritas violated the requirements. O'Keefe agreed in the employment agreement that all of the work and work product derived from O'Keefe belonged to Project Veritas. Well, no, it's not. It's not in quotes. James O'Keefe's employment with Project Veritas did not end until May 15th. And in the employment agreement that James O'Keefe signed, he is not allowed to do any of what he's doing until a year after the employment ends. This is not in dispute, guys. You can laugh this off. I know that but he wasn't getting paid. He was suspended without pay. That doesn't mean he was fired. It's not the same thing. I really don't know what people are misunderstanding about this. Yes. James, because of his narcissistic delusions that he is allowed to do anything and everything under the sun, really effed up. Well, even if he did quit, it wouldn't have mattered because his employment agreement said that he cannot do what he's doing until a year after the termination of the employment. So James O'Keefe could have quit back in February, which he did not do. He could have quit. He could have resigned from his position on the board. He could have resigned as his position as CEO. He did not do that, partially because I think that James O'Keefe really thought that Project Veritas was going to say, "Come back, James. Come back. Come back. Come back. We need you." Well, it's not though, Peter, because he got access to that information in the course of working with Project Veritas. And even if that proves to be false, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all because do you know what is not in dispute? James O'Keefe running all over conservative media and disparaging Project Veritas. You can't, you like, there is nothing that you guys can say to that. There's nothing. Let's see. He improperly breached his contract, improperly breached his contract, improperly breached his contract. I mean, it's also provably true that he solicited Project Veritas employees because at least 2 of them went to work for him. That's provably true. James O'Keefe was also using equipment from Project Veritas with his new organization. As a direct and proximate result of O'Keefe's foregoing breaches of contract intentionally and properly procured by OMG, plaintiffs have been irreparably harmed and are entitled to preliminary injunctive relief from 1. Disparaging plaintiffs through O'Keefe and or based on information to provided to him in violation of the non-disparagement agreement, blah, blah, blah. They've suffered irreparable harm, blah, blah, blah. This is talking about the other people involved. The other people involved, the Project Veritas people, basically did the same thing that James did, is what this is saying. Okay, prayer for relief. Wherefore, plaintiff respectfully requests that this court declare O'Keefe in breach of his employment agreement, in violation of his fiduciary responsibilities, and in violation of duty of loyalty. Declare Anthony in breach of his agreement, declare Maxwell in breach of his agreement, declare OMG to have tortiously interfered with the employment agreement and the other employees, declare James O'Keefe to have misappropriated plaintiff trade secrets, declare O'Keefe liable to indemnify plaintiffs for the cost of defense and or liabilities arising from action taken by him and or errors of omission. Even if he had quit in February, he still wouldn't be allowed to do what he's doing because the employment agreement specifically said he couldn't do it for 1 year following. Issue a preliminary and permanent injunction enjoining O'Keefe and OMG from soliciting or contacting Project Veritas donors, disparaging plaintiffs. It means he went all over conservative media and lied about them to discredit them and to build up his new competing organization. Again, Peter, you're smarter than this. You are smarter than this. We can assess this based on a calendar. It's not hard to assess it based on a calendar. This all happened back in February. James's contract with Project Veritas was not terminated until May. And in the meantime, he set up a competing media group and did a conservative media tour disparaging Project Veritas while he was still employed by them. None of this is in dispute, Peter. It all happened in public, and public information does prove it. This all happened in public. Nope, that's not the question at all. There is not the question of whether the constraints are reasonable and enforceable because James O'Keefe signed the contract. That is not going to be in question at all. The contract, as it's laid out here, is a very, very standard employment agreement. It doesn't matter what incurred in private, Peter. It does not matter. It does not matter in the least little bit. See, you guys are distracted by how much you love James O'Keefe. And your distraction, facts don't care about your feelings, guys. Your distraction with how much you like personally James O'Keefe is overshadowing the plain and simple facts that we all witnessed. You cannot overcome a calendar. Well, it looks like every employment agreement I've ever seen. So do you have evidence that it's not like every employment agreement that I've ever seen? Do you have evidence? Do you have receipts? I'm going to guess you don't. This is where the facts don't care about their feelings crowd like really loses their way because all they care about is feelings. We like James O'Keefe. We like James O'Keefe. We like James O'Keefe. And they're overlooking the fact that James O'Keefe openly and blatantly violated his contract. Let's overlook the conservative media tour that James O'Keefe did on Charlie Kirk, on Steve Bannon, on what else did he go on? Megyn Kelly, on every single major conservative show, lying about Project Veritas, openly lying about Project Veritas. You're not allowed to do that, guys. You are not allowed to do that. Like, I just don't know how this isn't clear. You cannot, while you are employed by an organization with which you have a contract that obligates you to the organization, while you are on the board of directors of that organization, you cannot go on a media tour disparaging the organization. Oh, is he really? He's going on Tim Pool tonight. Maybe we should watch that. James O'Keefe, holy shit, what a, god damn it. This is a narcissistic sabotage like I have never seen a narcissistic sabotage before. This is crazy. It is that simple, Peter, because we are talking about a calendar. I have yet to see anyone in the chat reading and complaining about my assessment of how badly James O'Keefe is going to lose this. I have yet to see anyone in the chat. Oh yeah, he went on Russell Brand too. Exactly. I would like one single person in the chat to refute the fact that James O'Keefe, well employed by Project Veritas, well a member of the board of directors of Project Veritas, did not openly violate this contract. I would like to see one person in the chat dispute that James O'Keefe went on a conservative media tour disparaging Project Veritas, well still employed and a member of the board of directors of Project Veritas. Does anyone have anything to counter those two things other than, there's more than one side, Carlin? No, there's not more than one side to this, guys. There's not. There's not. All of this bullshit started in February. James O'Keefe was employed with Project Veritas until May 15th. It's not a similar situation to Tucker Carlson. It's really not. It's not similar at all. It's really not. The only thing that matters, James O'Keefe left but did not resign from Project Veritas in February. James O'Keefe, even after he left Project Veritas in February, was still a member of the board of directors. He was still technically the CEO of the organization. He was still employed by the organization. After James O'Keefe left Project Veritas, when he was still a member of the board of directors, still the CEO of the organization, he set up a he set up a competing media organization. He also went on a conservative media tour disparaging Project Veritas openly and brazenly over and over and over and over and over again to millions of people. He then started putting out content from his own competing media organization. And he did this while he was still employed by Project Veritas, which did not end until May 15th. You cannot do that. Well, we might have to snipe the shit out of that stream. You cannot do that, guys. You can't. Facts don't care about your feelings. Calendars don't care about your feelings. Defamation law doesn't care about your feelings. Employment agreements don't care about your feelings. Like, I don't care how much you like James O'Keefe. I don't care how good of a singer James O'Keefe is. I don't care how good of a journalist James O'Keefe is. You cannot do the things that James O'Keefe has done and not get your ass handed to you in court if the organization decides to sue you. You can't. It does not matter what private communication was had. It does not matter. It was made, Peter, we know this. It was made extremely clear to James O'Keefe that they did not fire him. We know this. We've seen the communications, Peter. Oh my God. Speaking of which, I just got a text from Project Veritas. Hang on. Okay. That's funny, though. That's funny. No, we're not done yet. We're not done. I just wanted to answer the text that I just got, which is about something actually important. All right. What else? They want to issue a preliminary injunction to prevent James from contacting plaintiffs' donors, employees, or contractors, disparaging plaintiffs, obtaining, using, or disclosing plaintiffs' confidential information, keeping and failing to return plaintiffs' private property. I cannot fucking believe. Yeah, everything's fine. Everything's fine. Don't worry about it. I cannot believe that James O'Keefe is going on Tim Pool tonight. James O'Keefe is like digging the fucking hole. We're going to have to snipe that stream for sure. Issue a preliminary and permanent injunction enjoining the employees, compel James O'Keefe to account for his official conduct under New York Business Corporation law. What is hang on, what does Tim have to say about this? Is Tim Tim is going, Project Veritas is finished. If Tim Pool is saying Project Veritas is finished, he is so full of shit. I'm sorry. Can someone ask HG Tutor to analyze this situation, please? I can't do it. Someone ask him to do it. Please? Can we get a narcissistic analysis on if James O'Keefe is a narcissist? Award plaintiffs compensatory, actual and or liquidated punitive and or nominal damages. All funds, I don't know how to say that word. All funds by which James O'Keefe and OMG were unjustly enriched on account of misappropriation of plaintiff's trade secrets and disordering his organization's salary during his period of disloyalty. Award plaintiff's damages, award plaintiff's attorney's fees, demand for jury trial, plaintiff's demand trial by jury. Okay, Exhibit A, they've got the employment agreement in here. So, Peter, we have the employment agreement. James O'Keefe made over $400,000. I would have actually thought that would be more, to be honest. I mean, he is more like, well, first of all, he's the ultra narcissist, so nothing I do will ever compete with that. But I also think he's more detached from the situation than I am, being that I'm literally fucking texting with Project Veritas for fucking now, okay? Hang on one sec. All right, let's just take a look at these supplements. Peter, we literally have like Peter, click on the link pinned to the top of the chat right now, and it's got the information that you say you want. I'm not going to read the whole employment contract because you guys can go read it in the PDF yourself. I just want to see what other exhibits they have. The other guy's employment agreement. Is it just all their employment agreements? How much was he paid? Oh God, 50. Oh God, I feel so bad for these guys. I feel here's who I really feel for in this situation is the people who James O'Keefe poached from Project Veritas, who made $15 to $20 an hour. They're getting caught up in something that they probably just didn't understand. Maxwell employment agreement, same thing. Is that all? That's all. Okay, those are their. All right, guys. So that is the complete lawsuit with James O'Keefe with Project Veritas suing James O'Keefe's ass into the sunset. Project Veritas is going to win. There's no doubt in my mind. There is no loophole. There is nothing. And the reason I say that is we covered everything that happened when it happened. Calendars are not in dispute. A lot of this stuff is not in dispute. It is what it is. So here is my assessment. James O'Keefe is a narcissist. And I've said that from the beginning. I always thought that James O'Keefe was an asshole. But I always thought that's not just like, sometimes you need to be an asshole to do great things. Okay. So I've always said that I thought that James O'Keefe was exactly the right person to build Project Veritas. James O'Keefe is amazing at what he does. There is no one like him. I am not discounting his ability or his intelligence or anything like that. But James O'Keefe is a narcissist. James O'Keefe produced entire events that were just about James O'Keefe. James O'Keefe put his brand ahead of Project Veritas. James O'Keefe spent money to stay Project Veritas money to stay in luxury hotels when other Project Veritas employees were staying in like the budget accommodations. James O'Keefe spent Project Veritas money to fly around in a helicopter for no good reason. James O'Keefe had Project Veritas employees running his errands, fixing his boat, all that good stuff. I had a personal interaction with James O'Keefe where he tried to take all of my work away from me and didn't understand why I didn't just want to turn it over to him to do with what he would. And that really rubbed me the wrong way. Like, I think that James O'Keefe is a narcissist. I think he thought he would get away with this because he's James O'Keefe. I think that he really thought that he could sink Project Veritas into the ground when he didn't get his way and when they refused to fire the board to please him. And the board was trying to control him. The board was like, you can't do whatever you want with our money, James. And you can question whether or not James O'Keefe should have set the organization up the way he did. I don't think James O'Keefe should have set the organization up the way he did. I wrote a whole article about it. The downfall of James O'Keefe at Project Veritas was the fact that he set it up as a nonprofit in the first place. And as soon as you set it up as a nonprofit, you have to hire a board, and that board has oversight over you. It is no longer your organization. And so I think that the biggest mistake that James O'Keefe made, if he wanted ultimate control over his organization, was that he should never have set it up as a nonprofit in the first place. But he did. Pineapple Girl, I'm sorry. You're simping for James O'Keefe, girl. Like, none of this is in dispute. He's going to lose. You are wrong. I'm sorry. I'm going to say it. You're wrong. James O'Keefe's narcissism got the better of him because he really thought that the rules didn't apply to him. He thought he could spend all their money. He thought he could be shitty to employees in meetings. He thought that he could get away with everything. He thought that he could remain employed by Project Veritas and set up a competing organization to Project Veritas. He thought that he could poach Project Veritas's employees to get them to all come work for him. He thought he could poach Project Veritas's donor list. He thought he could do a conservative media tour across Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk, Russell Brand, Megyn Kelly, Mark Levin, disparaging Project Veritas to millions of people while he was still employed by them under an employment agreement that he signed. This is going on Tim Pool tonight, presumably to continue to complain about this. This is a narcissist just like really overestimating what they can get away with and thinking they are immune from everything, thinking they are invincible, thinking they're smarter than everyone and better than everyone, and just not effing getting it. He's going to lose, and he is going to lose so badly, and it makes me so sad. It really does, because again, I think as much of an asshole as I think James O'Keefe is, I also think that he is so valuable. And I think the fire and the spunk that he brings to things is so valuable, and I think he's gotten people to look at things and in ways that you like that people weren't looking at them before. And it makes me so sad because it didn't have to be this way. But I suppose it is what it is. James O'Keefe is going to lose. He's going to lose big time, and everyone should just start wrapping their heads around that idea. Beth says, I got my book. I'm a bit more off than usual in the future. That's why. Beth, I just started reading it last night. I'm only on the introduction, and it's already crazy. They have abolished the family in the first couple pages, Beth. They really do. All right, guys. I am going to end the stream here for now. Now, in 40 minutes, I'm coming back for the regular 5 p.m. stream. I got to make a phone call. I have important things to coordinate. But I'll be back at 5 p.m. for the stream where we are going to listen to the conservative DeSantis versus Trump Twitterati basically like go totally Real Housewives. And then fuck it, why don't we just snipe Tim Pool's stream tonight and watch James O'Keefe just like boo? Let's watch James O'Keefe continue to dig that hole later, shall we? Shall we? Why not? All right, guys. We'll see you in a little bit. Take care, and we'll see you at 5 p.m. Bye.